Okay, I understand what the court said. I understand what the law may say. On the other hand, why in the world can't you just say, let's respect the flag, let's respect men and women, let's stand for the anthem?
I'm a fan of doing that, Ed, absolutely. And it's funny because our constitutional government and the Supreme Court decisions, however, say that people don't have to be forced to believe in what it is that I believe in, i.e. stand up for the national anthem. And they basically said that you have a right under the First Amendment to protest, and that's what this comes down to. So a lot of times people conflate or confuse a legal issue with a political and a moral issue. And this court is basically saying this child, this kid, cannot be forced to stand up for the national anthem. And that is something that's been protected in the Constitution since cross-burning with the KKK, KKK protests, and all sorts of speech that we hate and find vile.
You know, Ashley, this was simmering and simmering throughout the NFL season. Some teams sort of found an accommodation where they might kneel, some players kneel before the anthem to express their free expression, as we all have and can and should do. But then everybody stand for the anthem. It seems like the NFL didn't really come up with a clear, coherent policy, and now it might be trickling down to college and football and high school football as well.
Right, definitely. And that's where these students are getting the idea from. They're watching these NFL players. They're wanting to emulate them. They're saying, we want to do this as well. The big distinction for the courts and what we're going to see going forward with this decision is that the NFL is a profit-based corporation. It's a private entity. It is not a government entity. When you're dealing with high school students and you're dealing with certain colleges, those are public schools. And when you've got kids that are forced, they're mandated to go to school, you've also got to have the same constitutional protections that you have in any other government-run agencies. And so they've got the constitutional right to freedom of speech, where in the NFL, it's a different analysis. But I think what we're going to see going forward in this country is that any other high school that wants to impose some type of ban, like this high school in California did, they're going to now take a second look and say, you know what, this is not going to be allowed. We're not going to be able to continue to ban students from the right to expression and the right to free speech as long as it doesn't interfere with their educational goals.
And that's all well and good, but Robert, the coach can also say, I'm going to sit that player.
Well, if he does that, and getting back to the point, if government takes action, and this is a public school, and he penalizes somebody for exercising a known constitutional right to protest, which this is, then he's committing a violation under 42 U.S.C. 1983, which is our civil rights discrimination law, and he is subjecting himself in the school to massive civil liability and the payment of attorney's fees. So they would be wise not to have any retaliatory action for somebody exercising a constitutional right.
But when you start citing U.S. code like that, Ashley, have our sports just become warped now to the point that, if the coach wants to make a decision, we're going to have to go to the U.S. code?
Well, you've got to look at where this case started. It started by students heckling the student that actually filed this lawsuit and calling him racial slurs. And so, the coaches and the parents need to stand up and say none of that's okay. None of that's okay, because what happened is they started out with this bad sportsmanship policy, and then they took it too far, and they instilled this rule that says you can't kneel during the national anthem. And so you've got to go back and just teach your kids the right thing to do, and then hopefully it doesn't ever get to the point where we've got to have the code involved. And hopefully the coach would set a good example, and the coach would teach these kids to do the right things, especially the coach of the kids that started this in the first place.
I got 15 seconds, though. I wonder, what about when a coach, we've seen these cases in high schools and public schools, coach wants to say a prayer before the game, and people freak out and say, you can't do that. What if the coach said, well, that's my free expression. I want to share a prayer?
Yeah, well, the problem is that the coach can't place his expression of freedom of speech and freedom of religion on other people. And again, we get back to the same analysis. And listen, I think that we need prayer. I believe in standing for the national anthem. I think we've lost a lot in this country by the manner in which we're deprecating mores of society. But when it comes down to a controversy, unfortunately, Ed, that law that I cited, the good fences make good neighbors. They go to the law, and we have to follow the law ultimately.
All right, Robert, Ashley, Happy New Year.
Happy New Year, Ed.
Thank you. Happy New Year.